So my name is Adina. I'm the clinical director at the Liberation Institute, and I've been in that role for I think about 2.5 years now. Prior to that, I was a supervisor. I still continue to supervise, and also prior to that, an intern. I started off with the Liberation Institute in June of 2009. So I've been collecting hours and then coming back as a supervisor and involved for a while. There's a really beautiful 5-minute YouTube video that's actually posted on our website of Stever Dahlman, our founding director, talking about the origin of the Institute. So I definitely encourage everybody to take a look at that. And it just shares our philosophy and stuff. But basically, the Liberation Institute was born out of the work he and I met in the East-West psychology program at CIIS, and it was born out of the work that he and I were doing at that time. And he brought me in the beginning along with another colleague of ours, Scott. And it started off as just the three of us. Stever pulled the first clients that we had off the street and set up lawn chairs in the one room we had at Active Space to start the Liberation Institute. And really, it's a grassroots community mental health nonprofit. Our primary focus is weekly psychotherapy. We also have adjunct services. During COVID times, this has shifted a little bit. Historically, we've had meditation and yoga classes, among other things. Now we're 100% doing teletherapy. So we have some groups that we're offering online as well. I would say our main philosophy and orientation really is liberation psychology. And so when I say that to people, I've actually found that most people don't know what I'm talking about. But I would encourage folks to look that up. And basically, we're coming from a social justice model where we're very almost like anarchist in our approach in terms of having a light on the like hierarchy. It's kind of like a co-op, everybody contributes, and it's really sort of a community effort to provide low cost psychotherapy to those who would sort of fall through the cracks in other programs and services. So that's our bread and butter. I think you actually asked something also about the population served. I guess I could speak to that a little bit. We basically see our clients are like just a slice of life in San Francisco. So it's a huge array of presenting issues and types of clients. It's a very diverse clientele. We're definitely skewed slightly towards lower SES because of our low sliding scale. Basically starts at $1 and nobody's turned away for a lack of funds. So we see folks who are sometimes marginally housed or homeless, living in their cars, students, some people who are gainfully employed, and even some folks that work in like tech companies. Sometimes people have insurance, they don't want to use it, or they have insurance that doesn't cover mental health care. And so those folks sometimes choose to come to us. And like I said, within that, it's every presenting issue you can imagine: dually and triply diagnosed folks, people dealing with grief and life transitions, and career changes, and just whatever combination of those that's out there. We see primarily individual adults. We have about 20%. So let me back up a little bit. We see this fluctuates, but somewhere between 400 and 600 clients a week. And of those, it's about 20% couples. So we do get that population sometimes. We don't work with very many kids or youth. Of those maybe 500 clients at a time, at any given time, there's like maybe 15 or 20 kids or youth. Occasionally there will be like a family group, but that's kind of rare for us. So for folks who are looking for those kid hours, is that a good match? Not a huge amount, to be quite honest. We don't, like other clinics, we don't have our trainees doing like intake calls or anything like that. We actually have a staff member that sort of fields all of the inquiries and stuff. If people want to, they can do intake assessments. We call those consultations. We don't generally train folks to do consultations right off the bat. Just because it's kind of a steep learning curve with all the other stuff that we're asking folks to do. But down the road, if people want to do that, it's actually a great way if a client is like on vacation or for a couple of weeks or something, and somebody would like to fill that spot with a clinical hour, they can do an assessment. And basically that's it's like an initial intake appointment, but we don't call it, we don't call those folks our clients, because we're trying to determine at that point whether it's a good match to become a client of the Liberation Institute. So that's the distinction there. But if folks want to, they can do that. There's sort of what we call like a karma yoga task that we ask people to do. This is kind of just a contribution to helping run the Institute. Back when we were in rooms and in person, that involved things like making copies of forms or stocking rooms or helping clean, that sort of thing. Nowadays, it tends to be different types of things, like helping a colleague who may be struggling with the like online format of our documents or something like that. But there's very little sort of required outside of just the general sort of clinical work with us. A bit, but basically people can call or email or fill out a contact form on our website, and all of those go to our incoming desk. So there's a staff person that manages all of those, and then he assigns folks that are interested to a consultation appointment. And at that appointment, they sign some initial consent forms and paperwork, and a sort of more formal assessment of them occurs. And this is like a 5 or 6 page assessment, so pretty thorough background. We ask folks their like presenting issues and any preferences for the type of therapist they would like to work with and their availability. And then we take that into consideration in making those client assignments. So after the assessment is done, that material comes back to the management team, and we make the assignments to the clinicians that have open spots that match the availability and preferences stated by the incoming client. And usually it works out pretty well. Occasionally, well, we also ask people if their preference is just a preference or a deal breaker for them. And we also take that into consideration. Folks who have more sort of like deal breakers in terms of what type of therapist they want to work with tend to wait on our waiting list longer, because we may not always have that match. For example, if somebody asks for like a gay, POC therapist over 40 or something, we may not have that. So we also tell people, like, the more flexible they can be, the more likely they'll get paired with somebody sooner. So it's not always an exact match, but most of the time it works out great. And occasionally clients do come back to us and say this isn't a good match, and we reassign. But most of the time it works out perfect. So. So we have minimum requirement, which is minimum of 5 client contact hours a week, and attending at least 1 group supervision a week. Our group supervisions happen every day of the week except for Sunday, and some days there are multiple groups. So we're very flexible in terms of setting folks' schedules. We can really work around a lot of other, what's the word, like engagements that people have or responsibilities. And then in addition to the 5 hours, the 2 hours of group, and it's like an hour or 2 of administrative tasks each week. So usually averages somewhere around 8 to 10 hours a week. And then people can see more than 5 clients if they want to. There's really no upper limit except for what people can sort of handle without burning out, right? Because we're well aware that people have lots of other things going on in their lives. So on average, people see probably around 8 to 10 clients, and that fluctuates. But just keeping in mind that the Liberation Institute also doesn't offer individual supervision. So if folks do exceed, as a trainee, if folks exceed 5 clients a week, they would need to attend a second group supervision with us. So that does add a chunk of time onto folks' schedules. Either that, or we do have folks who are working with outside supervisors. I know that some of the programs at CIIS have offered individual supervision to students. So if folks want to use an outside supervisor like that, that's fine with us, and use that as a unit of supervision so they can see more than 5 clients. And we have a template for that agreement that needs to be signed for the BBS to make all of that copacetic. Well, we have a supervision team. There are right now, I think, well, I'm one of the folks, so I'm an LCSW and also have a PhD from CIIS. I think we have three right now, MFTs. One supervisor is leaving us pretty soon. So there'll be 2 MFTs and then 2 PsyDs. So that's our supervision team. And we're all pretty different. We all come from different backgrounds and, sort of have different orientations and stuff. I, especially coming from CIIS and having like the social work background, I do a lot of like mindfulness based, like Buddhist psychology. And I find that dovetails really nicely with like CBT and DBT work. And that's sort of the orientation that I have, among other things. I do some internal family systems and other stuff too. And I would say we're all pretty eclectic, but it's a wide range. One of our MFTs is very sort of like short-term solutions focused, and advertises himself as sort of like a therapist / coach. And then like one of our PsyDs is kind of an older woman who's like at the end of her career and has done a lot of more psychoanalytic based work. So she's like a bit more sort of traditional in that sense. So there's a range there. And we ask people to pick like a home group, but we're flexible. People can switch groups if it's not a good match with the supervisor. And then, like I said, sometimes people attend 2 groups. So you're getting, 2 different perspectives. So that works out well. I guess I should say too, like one of the great things about the groups to me is that they're very diverse. We have students, both trainees and associates actually with us from schools all around the Bay Area and California, from the Wright Institute, Pacifica, Pepperdine, Alliant, Golden Gate University. I mean, you name it, Toro. I can't even remember all the places. But everybody has a very different background and brings different training and orientations to the work. And so it makes, along with all the CIIS perspectives, right, a very dynamic conversation in our supervision groups. So I find it really engaging. And I think that that's one of the highlights of our training, actually, is getting to hear from such a diverse group. Yeah, so again, this has changed a little bit since COVID. Unfortunately, we used to have more of a like in-person programs, like workshops and things. We've had like an MBSR training. We had a training on polyvagal theory. Nowadays it's a little bit more sort of self-paced. We have a database that all the supervisors have put together of all of these different articles, YouTube videos, podcasts that we've recommended as like a training opportunity, so people can go on there and listen, or watch one of the videos, and then there's like a questionnaire that we have that goes with it, and they can sort of present about it in their group and count that as a training hour. If that makes sense. So it's a little bit more self-paced. Another component, we're recently wrapping up several weeks long race and implicit bias training, that for all our therapists. And this was the first time that we've had a training like this that's been required for everybody with our agency. And so it's been a bit of a learning curve for us. We're about to actually just collect feedback from the community and hopefully fold that back into the next iteration of this group. But this will be an ongoing thing. So there'll definitely be another component of training around that in the future. And beyond that, it's evolving. We have another Liberation Institute branch in Portland now. And Elizabeth, who's directing that clinic, is really interested in psychedelic research and relationship to clinical work. And she's starting like, I forget what she's calling it, but essentially like a monthly like chat, which will have some content presentation and then conversation about that material. So that's upcoming, and we'll see what else we're able to do with this new virtual world. Well, I think in general, somebody who can work really independently, and this is especially true now that everything is remote. So we really need people who can like stay on top of their own schedule and, you know, contact clients and be responsible for that kind of stuff from home, right? Everything we do is on the Google Suite at this point, and via email. So people who are, you know, comfortable working in that kind of environment, who are responsive on email, and who are familiar with the Google Suite. And, you know, we also have like a DocHub account, so that people can electronically sign our consent forms. And we have like a very detailed instruction sheet about that and provide training about it, of course, and there's support for it, but definitely folks that feel comfortable kind of navigating that is a big piece. And then the independent piece, I mean, I guess, you know, that also goes for just like being able to sort of go with the flow and handle whatever comes up with clients. It's a pretty loose structure for those folks. You know, a lot of times for brand new trainees who are really anxious, they might need kind of more structure and holding than we offer at the Liberation Institute. So just so folks know, you know, we're much looser than some of the other sites as far as that's concerned. So you know, there's two sides to that coin. We're very flexible with people's time. Folks can pretty much set their own schedule and work around their other responsibilities. So for people that have kids or a full-time job, it works great. But like I said, for folks who need more structure and holding, you know, it's a double-edged sword. I guess it's a little bit like kind of trial by fire, in the sense that like you never know who's going to walk in the room. We have a very wide range of clients, and occasionally, you know, someone's very first client could be somebody who's you know, fairly like severe in their presentation. So yeah, I guess just being comfortable with that idea. There's a lot of support, like I said, but people really need to be able to kind of reach out for that. Most of the time, people's client loads are some combination of folks who are sort of more together and, you know, sort of better able to manage the day-to-day stuff, and then folks who are more sort of decompensated and challenging. The only type of client that we don't work with at the Liberation Institute are folks who are in acute crisis. So just keeping that in mind, like, you know, if there's, for example, somebody who's like a schizophrenic, who's like not well managed on meds, we're not going to work with that person. And that's somebody that we would refer out. It takes a lot to get referred out from the Liberation Institute, because we really view ourselves as kind of a like one of the last like safety nets of providing these services to folks. But people have to be organized enough to come to weekly psychotherapy. So that's the threshold, basically. just in terms of like application procedures and stuff, I'm the sort of first point of contact for folks. People can send their, so we ask for cover letter, resume, and either 2 references like names and numbers for folks that we can talk to, or letters of recommendation. And so folks can send that material to info@Liberation Institute or to me, Adina@Liberation Institute. And either way, it'll get to me. So I look forward to meeting folks, and you know, we usually conduct a pretty brief informal interview that lasts maybe 30, 40 minutes. And it's a pretty chill onboarding process as well. There are some onboarding trainings and things, but usually we can get people started like from the point of like accepting a placement to seeing clients in like 4 to 6 weeks. So it can happen pretty quickly. You know, the other thing I guess too is that we have sort of rolling admissions. There's no like cohort really. We have people coming and going all the time. So we're totally open to receiving applicants whenever and starting folks whenever. There are always a group of people starting in the fall and the spring just because of school and that structure. But we also have started this past semester, we've started folks through October, really. We're finally sort of at this point taking a break from onboarding until January. And then we'll have a group of folks starting with us then. But in general, it's pretty rolling in terms of start date.